Member Bradley?
Here.
Member Muschetti?
Here.
Member Almond?
Here.
Me- Chair Evian?
Absent.
Member Antu?
Absent.
Here.
Member Riley?
Absent.
Here.
All right, so we will move on. Do we have any?
Once they move, and I'll notify you all at the meeting. For the budget, if you all want to go to that page, I can run down any specifics. I'll highlight the contracts. We will only be having the RCS aftercare and the RCS crisis respite contract. And then the funds for the PUF are in there as well for the construction, and those numbers are from GSA.
Sorry. Tell me what GSA.
General Services Agency,
That's what I thought, but I just wanted to clarify. Thank you.
of course.
You look at these things all the time, we don't.
I'm open to any suggestions on what would make the report a little bit easier for folks who aren't looking at them all the time.
Is there something you wanted her to walk through?
No, it's just, after a certain point, I get flunked. Not their fault.
There's nothing out of the ordinary in this report.
That would be my question, that if there is something out of the ordinary, you know, an extreme expense or an overrun on the budget, that would be the thing. Budget so much, it's somewhat autopilot. But I appreciate you, and you have big shoes to fill.
I know,
Yeah.
very big shoes to fill behind Mary
Good
Alice.
job, so thank you for the presentation today.
Of course.
And it's nice that you made the statement about the funds for the jail.
I figured that would be the only question.
Yeah, because that sounds like it's in abeyance right now.
Yeah.
I appreciate that all the information's here and available. Thank you, May.
Of course.
Any other comments or questions on the report?
I'm just going to ask a question. So the NAMI funds that were not used, they're just back in the general budget, is that correct?
That is correct.
I just wanted to make sure. Thank you, and
Yes.
for clarification, thank you very much.
Yes.
Any other committee members' comments or questions? Any public comments or questions? All right, hearing none, if everyone is good, we'll move on to 3C. Update and discussion regarding Measure B related items at the Board of Supervisors meetings. There were none since the last meeting. There hasn't been anything that's gone to the Board of Supervisors since the last meeting, so nothing to report on that agenda item. Any comments or questions? Any public comments or questions? All right, hearing none, we will go to 3D. An update on the current projects for Measure B. You'll see the Behavioral Health Regional Training Center.
I recently, and I'm not sure if this is the right place, but with that regard, I spoke with Dr. Trotter last month at a public event. And I usually don't ever ask a public question if I don't know the answer. But I asked a public question, I got an answer which I wasn't expecting, not the best answer in the world. For all of us who remember when Measure B was passed, one of the reasons that many community members supported it was for the purpose of getting our emergency department rooms emptied so they can be used for people who are victims of other illnesses and injuries other than mental illness. And I asked Dr. Trotter if he has seen an increase in vacancy of emergency department rooms because of what Measure B is doing? And he said, absolutely not. He said there's still an overabundance of emergency rooms being filled by victims of mental illness. And I'm not sure how we could quantify that without getting somebody from Adventist here to clearly say that we're on a trend of lowering those visits or not. And it was just really frustrating for me. I'll never ask that public question again without knowing the answer. But do you have any thoughts on that as a director?
I think that, crisis ebbs and flows. And just because we're going to add a psychiatric health facility, that doesn't mean we're going to have no one that ends up in our emergency room needing a psychiatric bed. Because if we have 16 beds and all of our beds are full, they're now going to be in there waiting for a bed somewhere else. So there's always going to be, unless we get to a point that we have enough beds across the state of California and that people can go straight from a cop car into a psychiatric health facility, that doesn't happen, right? So psych hospitals still require a medical clearance. So I can't take somebody on a hold and then bring them to a psych hospital. I can't even leave them in our lobbies, right? They're going to say, where's your medical clearance? So there is always, at this point, unless we see changes in the way psych facilities operate, that there is always going to need to be they are going to go to the ER, get their medical clearance, and then go to the facility. So there's always going to be a pass-through unless something changes. It would be nice to see a change where the facilities could do their own medical clearance and they didn't have to hit our emergency rooms first. There's also times when you can't find a bed in California. Generally, when we can't find a bed, most counties can't find a bed. So it's usually when they're full, they're full. And so then we're all fighting for the same beds. It doesn't mean we're going to see less 5150s. I'd love to say we're seeing less 5150s. I'm not sure that we're seeing less 5150s, especially after COVID. People aren't doing well after COVID, and we know as we go and start seeing potential deficits and money becomes, and struggles and stress become issues, we often see more people not doing well. And so we're in the middle of, we knew that mental health was going to be a big issue after COVID. It is. We're seeing that. I'll also see that psych hospitals don't want to take high-level clients. So they say they're too acute for us. And yes, it's a very,
That's normal.
they're too young, they're too acute. And so then what happens, unfortunately, they sit in our emergency rooms waiting for some facility to say, finally, we'll take that individual. And I have asked the question many times, I thought you were a psychiatric.
Number of people all have to underlying medical reason for the person to be in hospital. That's going to happen. But as far as hopefully reducing the number of emergency responses, because that's the way we've always done it, that's what I hope we're going to be reducing.
If you looked at our numbers, the number of 5150s have reduced over the last couple of years. And if you looked at the dual response, you would see the number of 5150s that were placed last year versus, the prior year versus last year, you would see a reduction. We know that dual response is reducing the number of individuals that need to be put on a hold. So we are able to see those. But I think where the hospitals are starting to feel, and I don't want to speak for them, but where they're feeling a little bit like we're still having people, is people unfortunately are staying longer, and they're not just an in and out. And so then if you have someone staying there longer, it also impacts your beds. But we can see across the county through RCS's numbers and dual response that we have seen the number of 5150s decreasing. That doesn't mean it doesn't still have an impact on our hospitals, unfortunately. And
That's a good response. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah.
So, Madrone House started out as just crisis respite for the purposes of anybody who comes in on a 5150. If they feel they can get along without a locked facility, at least temporarily, then they're moved there with a sitter. And that was dependent on Valtechis providing the medical care. And this was, I'm sorry, I'm mixing things. So there's crisis respite that takes mental health patients on a 5150. There was another need. And Val started taking care of, they call it medical respite, well, where people have medical issues that don't really need acute hospitalization. And she actually got as many as 3 beds at a time where people needed a place to go. And some of that has to do with hospitals that have patients that have avoidable days. They're not a safe discharge, but they really don't need an acute hospital, and they could go to Madrone House. But now the medical respite portion of that is gone. And so we've lost that capability. However, there are 2 different contingents. One is Adventist Health through a fellow named Jeremy Malin, who, and he is starting a medical respite facility that'll have about 10 beds, and I honestly don't know how far that is away from being functional.
In our county?
In our county.
Okay.
And there's a second one on the coast with Jessica Grinberg, if you may or may not know her. And she has a building that's huge. It's 40,000 square. Sports facility, but it's a gym. It's losing people. There's a swimming pool in there as well that's going to be filled in and used for, she can use it. She can use all of that area that she wants. And so she's going to start with 10 beds, but she could go up as high as 50 beds. I think what she really needs is some support. Like if the county realized they're going to need so many beds that some of us are working on. Mm-hmm.
And that would take people from all over the county.
Yes. And as I said, I think one thing that would help is if there was a known number of beds that could be used by some agency or some facility, and that could be provided as support, because she's just getting started on. I think it could be as little as months out to be operational. It would be helpful if she knew exactly what.
That's a huge building.
Yes, it is.
I didn't know it was going down the drain for a gym.
Yeah.
She wouldn't be able to take 5150s because they have to be in a certain type of facility, but she could take medical respite.
Well, 5150s went to Madrone House. Was that the same?
They'd have to be pulled off their 51.
Yeah.
Yeah, presently, mental health, people struggling with mental illness who become incarcerated are spread out all over the jail, all throughout the jail.
Nominations. All right, so any public comments? Roll call vote.
Girl, that's your job. See, you know it already.
Member Mosqueda,
Yes.
Member Almond,
Yes.
Director Miller,
Yes.
Member Daggery,
Yes.
Member Brash,
Yes.
All right, that passes. Congratulations, Joe, you are our new vice chair.
And Director Almond is going to go home with me and tell my husband.
I will call Fred and let him know.
And guess what? You get to sit here. On camera all the time.
All right, so we're going to go to item 4A, committee member report outs regarding any items of general interest. Claudia, do you want to call out the members and see if they have any interest, anything interesting to report out? You have to do a roll call for 4A.
Member Bradley,
No, thank you.
Member Mosqueda,
Nothing to report.
Member Almond,
Nothing to report. However, I would certainly like for everyone to talk about, or to be aware of what we talked about before about, we now have a representative from the auditors committee. So at the end of this director's report, if we could give her a microphone so we could hear a little bit about this, I'd appreciate it. But nothing to report. Thank you.
I concur.
Director Miller,
Nothing to report.
Member Daggery,
Nothing to report.
Member Brash?
Nothing to report.
All right.
All right, so before we close up, I will hand it over to Acting Auditor Controller Sarah Pierce.
Hello, so yeah, I'm Sarah Pierce, the Acting Auditor Controller since October. And so this week I applied to fill the position of the auditor role on this board. I believe it goes in front of the Board of Supervisors. I'm not sure when that will be. And then if they approve, I can then become a voting member. So I am happy to be here.
Thank you, Sarah. We
Yes.
appreciate it.
Very much, Sarah. And let me just tell you a little bit of history of when this was put in front of the voters. 11 people where it was clearly identified who would be acting up, who would be making up this meeting. And the auditor controller, her representative, was included, not for the purpose of using your financial skills as much so as being a person who's oversees government spending and may be able to give us some good advice, as well as your role as a citizen in this community, because you have neighbors and friends that may be involved in mental health as victims and so forth. And so any opinions you have on any of that is welcome at this committee, anything.
Okay, thank you.
I would just really quickly like to add, I don't know if the public realizes all that goes into putting on any kind of public meeting. And so I just want to say thank you to fiscal representation. Sarah, thank you for showing up here today, and support staff, IT, and admin staff. We appreciate you. Thank you.
All right, any public comments? Any other committee member comments? Hearing none, we will adjourn the meeting, and thank you guys.